You found it. It's The Real News with your host, David Knight.
Welcome back. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Steve Quayle and Timothy Alberino. And, of course, we're going to be talking about transhumanism and an upcoming conference called the True Legend Series. It's going to be happening in the fall. I'm going to be there as one of the keynote speakers. But before we get into that, Steve, let's talk a little bit about transhumanism, because as we were talking during the break, I think this is one of those things that has kind of been on the fringe of what people are looking at right now, and people aren't really paying that much attention to what is happening with it. But like we've seen with the transgender issue, that surfaced on the fringe. It would come up every once in a while in kind of a fringy way. But now it is at the center of everything the mainstream media and the educational systems are talking about. As I said earlier, AP's talking about the caravan that comes to the border. And they said, well, you know, there were women, children, and transgenders at the border. They didn't mention men, okay, but it was transgenders. There was evidently a lot of transgenders in this because they are the victim status that we have right there. And we have, as we're coming into transhumanism, I think right now it is not really in the public's view so much, but it is going to be something that is pushed very hard by the elites. We've got the Cato Institute. We've got Saudi Arabia as part of their modernization program. They're talking about, they just gave citizenship to a robot. We've got the Cato Institute, Libertarian Think Tank Institute, funded by Koch brothers and others, saying we have to start thinking about robot rights. It's like, you're a Libertarian Institute. Why aren't you talking about human rights? That's what we need to be talking about.
Well, the whole issue with human rights is boiled down in the transhumanist argument and the hybrid age that we're in now. Basically, humans are to be displaced with H+, or a better human being that isn't subject to the, quote, original sin or the shortcomings of the human being. In other words, God never did a good enough job, but these guys somehow that seem to be responsible for wars and everything that's going on around the world, they're going to program the ultimate moral authority, actually immoral authority. And so basically, David, transhumanism at its very core end result is the destruction of mankind and the total dissolution of biological reproduction. They're talking every day on the front of Drudge about growing mammoths and artificial wombs, and they're talking about basically lab babies. There will be no human reproduction, except for, of course, for the elite. And then with the sex robots and the whole, if you will, perversion of even robots, now they're going into areas of bestiality and pedophilia when it comes to robots. You can see where this is leading, and it absolutely is the, I would call, technecadence. Years ago when I started on talk radio, I came up with that word, technological decadence. And so what we're seeing now is an acceleration, and we're seeing pornography. Look at pornography. It's gone from real people now to virtual people, and pretty soon it'll be in the robotic world. And we're seeing this now taking place where even the normal prostitutes and women of the night are complaining that the robots are getting more action than they are. And so now there's a movement growing all over the world that the women say, no, we're real women. We want our, I'm not endorsing it, but what I'm saying is that even the sexuality, human sexuality, which was, you know, given originally to recreate and procreate men and women in God's image and likeness, the whole issue is who's God. And these guys don't believe in the God of heaven. They certainly believe in the Luciferian global elite. So that somehow Lucifer is going to give us a golden age, and it's been from the day one. And that's our ancient history series and the stuff we do there all brings it to this point too. And Talos, the first robot in history, 300 BC. I mean, we're talking about robots being around that long. Oh. And then Tim Alberino did a whole. He got knocked off of YouTube by this, but the point is he was doing a great job in describing in the Alberino analysis just how the, if you will, the secret societies have controlled technology. So they've always been gearing us to something, and who controls the mainstream media controls the world.
Yeah, and Tim Alberino, who is going to be running the conference that's going to be having the True Legends, you can find that TrueLegendsTheSeries.com, and you're putting that together. That's coming up in the fall, right, Tim?
Yeah, we're doing it's really an unprecedented conference that's taking place from September 14th through the 16th of this year. And David, you are our keynote speaker for this conference. We're really excited to have you. You guys here have been talking about transhumanism for years.
Yeah,
you've been on the forefront of this conversation. So we're really looking forward to it. We're bringing 3 organizations together for this conference: InfoWars, Gen 6 Productions, our company, and Skywatch TV with Tom Horn. And I'm sure many of your listeners know who Tom Horn is. He's also been on the forefront in the battle against the transhumanist agenda. So this is going to be an unprecedented event from the 14th to the 16th of September in Branson, Missouri. And people can get more information on gen6.com on our website for that. But we're really looking forward to
Oh, I am too. Because when we look at this, I mean, there's just an article, just over a month old, from Slate Magazine, Thinking Outside the Old Religious Box. What they are doing is they're offering this transhumanism as a replacement to religion. You know, we got to get rid of a religion. There's a yearning for transcendence, they said. And of course, that has always been there. You know, you go back to the biblical account of the Garden of Eden. It's like, you will become like God, you will live forever. And that is exactly what they're promising us right now. They're promising us the God of technology. And it is not only decadence, but it is a God that these people actually worship. They think that's going to give them eternal life. And you were talking, Steve, about the ending of human sex, the manufacturing of children, like Huxley's Brave New World and so forth. They're openly talking about this, or now talking about the time frame in which they will bring it in. It's a eugenics perspective on how they're going to manage everything. But it is also the end of humans and human families, of sexuality. And I think a big part of this, as I mentioned before, you know, the transgender thing that was on the fringe, then now brought mainstream. They're going to do the same thing with transhumanism. I think the transgender issue, however, is something that has been brought in as a transition, if you will, because they want to make that normal. You have the American Pediatric Society say, no, it is biological. It is your sex is biological, it is objective, and it is binary. They want to say, no, it is subjective, it is mental, it is not just two, you know, it is something like Star Trek or something.
Well, and I think Star Trek is kind of interesting because in a couple of the episodes, or even in the films, they had the Forbidden Zone, okay? And the Forbidden Zone, even the ancient civilizations like Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu, Hyperborea, Ultima Thule, Shambhala, they all have a construct in that where when they were talking about the highest form of their technology, and whether people believe it or not, when they started messing around with the human genome and even robotics and advanced technology, that's when they say the gods destroyed them. And that's when the whole, if you will, the whole argument of, well, where did good and evil come from?
Yeah.
These people are sinisterly wicked. To try and understand this, in my opinion, in a normal, logical, cohesive manner is impossible because it's spiritual. You know, we're talking about AI too, artificial intelligence. And what's important for people to understand is the artificiality means somebody is tampering with something that's real. You can't have artificial unless you have the reality of it. So the artificial intelligence, it's my...
All right, hold it right there. We're going to pick that up on the other side of the break. We got a hard break. We're going to be right back with Steve Quayle and Timothy Albrino. We're talking about the conference coming up on transhumanism. More on transhumanism when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Steve Quayle and Timothy Albrino. And we're talking about the upcoming conference, gen6.com, but more importantly, about transhumanism, because that's what the conference is going to be about. And you have to understand, as I pointed out earlier, Slate is saying, we got to think outside the old religious box. No, Steve, I think I'll go with that old-time religion. We're looking
Me
at
too.
This. And they say that they are disrupting the debate between science and religion by showing us a new way of framing the issue. But it really is the same old issue. You will become like God. You will live forever. And the God is the God of technology. But you were saying during the break that you've been identified along with Tom Horn as the transhumanist resistance. Is that what?
Yeah, that's a wonderful title that they've given us at Oxford University, specifically one author that is taking it upon himself to tell the transhumanists worldwide, hey, you better watch those guys because, you know, they're telling people that our plot, our plan, our scheme, the whole transhumanism is something, it's got spiritual overtones, and it's something that they've identified as evil. It's just like when you guys have had We Are the Resistance or You Are the Resistance.
And then it got co-opted by Hillary Clinton.
You got it. And, you know, the bottom line is the idea globally is that this thing is being globally implemented right now. A good example, China being able to scan 3 billion faces in 1 second. You know,
yes.
Well, the idea is everything's facial recognition now. Everything is audio recognition. Big Brother's getting bigger and bigger. But the pun intended, the largest issue facing us, in my opinion, after 25 years on talk radio, David, all the different books that have authored and put out there on the future, Genetic Armageddon, for instance, The idea is now we're at this point. We're at this point where Facebook, as you know, is going to vote on what they accept as truth. That came out today.
Yeah, they got a list of
They've got
people
a
that they
list.
approve, and they're going to have it ordered and sorted. And if you're not on the list, that information doesn't go around.
I will tell you 3 people that will not be most favored on that list right now that are on the screen. But again, what I think is critical is that when people are in, quote, they're the ones who are inside the box. They want us all in the square robot head with, their hands going like this.
Oh, they want to put us in the box. They want to put us in the Agenda 21 smart city box that they've got designed for us.
And those of us who they hate even more than that, they want us in a box, and it's like 6 feet under, or right, vaporized in the never land of techno bliss, okay? It was kind of like the old science fiction movies. And one of the things that is important for people to understand, when they're watching movies on TV, Transcendence, or the big screen, going to TV, I mean, even Star Trek and the Borg, we are being assimilated. We are being assimilated. And people had better stand up for InfoWars. They better stand up for those of us who are in the mainstream sites, okay?
That's right. And you mentioned some of the Hollywood movies. Of course, there's a TV series. I haven't seen it, but I know what it's about, Altered Carbon. And again, they're putting this idea out there that they can create some, they see the human body as merely a machine. I mean, there's so many different aspects to this. There's a religious aspect of it. When I have talked to transhumanists like Zoltan Isfan, it's like, so you tell me what you think a human is. Is a human merely the physical construct? And so if you can replicate that exactly, you have created a human being. They actually think that they're going to make exact copies of themselves and then transfer their consciousness or something somehow. I don't think that's going to happen, because I understand that a human is something fundamentally different about that. I think that, the soul, they don't understand that metaphysical aspect of it. They're simply looking at the physical aspect. And when they look at the design of the human body, they never see the designer. That is one of the most amazing things to me about that. They never see the intelligence behind it. And so they think that they can replicate that. They think that they can become like God with their technology.
Well, and they deny the God of heaven, yet they want to be the God of earth. And Zoltan Isfan said, as you know, you've interviewed him, the fact is that at the heart of everything, they want to live forever, and they don't want to die.
That's right.
And just like in the Garden of Eden, when obviously people say, I don't believe that. Well, I can tell you this same lie in the Garden of Eden now is thrust forth in the future. You're going to be as God, knowing good and evil, and ye shall not surely die. And so what, in my opinion, Satan is offering people is a panacea. Everything that Eve bought the lie in the Garden of Eden is now the pie in the sky of the transhumanists. And overcoming death, it's that spiritual entity. And it's my statement, I want to go on record on your show publicly, that the demon-possessed, the spiritual realm of all societies worldwide, what happens when a disembodied spirit with sentience, self-awareness, the ability, a knowledge of history, when Jesus cast the demons out, they said, have you come to judge us before our time? So they knew what time is. And so the thing is, imagine, if you will, these things not just being a robotic with a set of programming, in its artificial brain, but something that's actually being controlled, possessed by a spiritual entity. And people say, well, I don't believe in it. Well, 99% of the world believes in it. So that's why transhumanism and the hybrid age, what we're seeing is emerging of mini-machines. What we're seeing is going in and altering the genetics with CRISPR technology.
Yes.
And
that's a big part of it as well. It's not just building some kind of a mechanical thing to transfer your awareness to. They're talking about modifying their own bodies, and not in a silly way like it's being done right now. There was an article that came out a week ago today in the Daily Mail. A self-styled transhumanist has over 100 body modifications. Now, this is kind of silly stuff. He's got an electrical key fob that's in his hand. He's got silicon horns in his head. He's got a forked snake tongue. He's got pointed ears. And I'm looking at this stuff. Okay, forked tongue, pointed ears, horns in his head. It's like, where's he getting these ideas? What thing is he channeling here right now? I mean, this is just cosmetic stuff, but there's something satanic at the center of that.
And that's exactly the point. Transhumanism is more than a technological revolution. It is a religion.
Yes.
It is the religion of the future. And fundamentally, it's Luciferianism. As Steve said, you shall be as gods. So the driving force behind transhumanism is this Luciferian religion. And transhumanism, the word transhumanism, is indicative of a transition. It is the word itself is analogous with the word transformation or transmutation. So the question is, what are we being transformed into? And this is the future. It is inevitable. And what transhumanism represents is the transition between human and post-human.
Yes.
So the future for humanity on planet Earth is post-humanism. And the implications of post-humanism cannot be overstated. It's massive in the ramifications of post-humanism.
And they use that technology, that terminology as well.
That's their terminology, post-humanism.
Yeah.
And they kind of hide the post-human reality of the future. They kind of hide it in the cultural, the techno movement of transhumanism. They're not really telling you where this is headed, but the truth is it's a transformation of the human race out of their humanity into a state that is no longer human. And at the roots of this, what we have is a Luciferian conspiracy.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what you guys are talking about, going back to the Garden of Eden. This is a very ancient conspiracy, and we're watching the beginning of the fruition of this conspiracy in our time. And that's why, this conference is so dynamic, because it's you mentioned the Borg, and the Borg is, resistance is futile. Yeah. You're going to be assimilated. Well, that's kind of the mindset of the transhumanists too. This is the future. Resistance is futile, but we are the resistance, and we are going to resist.
That's right.
And that's what this conference is about.
That's right. Yeah, it's very important that we understand what their plans are, because we're not going to go along with that. We are not going to become something that is non-human, that is post-human. And they have so many different ways that this is going to be offered to us. Just a little adaptation. Look, I understand when people lose a limb or something, they want to have some prosthetic, and they do it in a gradual process that way. It's like, well, see, that's a good thing. Okay, yeah, okay, I'll agree with that. And I have a right to do whatever I want to myself. It's like, okay, I agree with that. But then they don't stop there. Then they start talking about genetic modification. Exactly. They talk about all this other stuff, and it is going to be something that is not, right now the idea is being floated out there. When we come back, we're going to talk about how close this time frame is, because all this technology is rapidly accelerating. Folks, think about how long it has been since we had the advent of the smartphone. Think about how that has transformed your life. Can you go anywhere without having that little listening device following you everywhere that you go? There are major transformations that are far more transforming than that they are planning to roll out in just the next 5 to 10 years. And this is part of it. We'll be right back with Steve Quayle. Welcome back. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Steve Quayle. Of course, you can find Steve Quayle at stevequayle.com. And you can find the conference that we've been talking about at gen6.com. That's S-I-X, Gen6, as in Genesis 6.com. And Timothy Alberino is organizing that. I think you're going to be speaking there as well. Tell us a little bit about that conference that's coming up in the fall. I'm going to be speaking there as one of the speakers, but you got a lot of speakers that are going to be there.
We do.
Big conference.
Yep. It's going to, there's 3,000 people that attend this conference. It's in Branson, Missouri at the Mansion Theater. The conference is almost sold out, but what we're doing is we just launched our live streaming. So we're doing live streaming for the conference, and we're giving the InfoWars audience a 10% discount. So if the if your listeners go to our website at gen6.com and they want to sign up for live streaming, the discounts for live streaming, they can use coupon code ELEX, and they'll get a 10% discount. And this is exclusively, we're offering this exclusively to the InfoWars audience.
Great.
We have a
10% discount if they use the code ALEX.
ALEX.
When they go
okay. Yep. They put it in. It's a coupon code. There's a coupon area there. They can put in ALEX, and they'll get the 10% discount. And we have an amazing lineup of speakers at this conference. Steve Quayle, yourself. I'm speaking at the conference. We have Hugo de Garis.
Yes.
Who's one of the leading minds.
I've interviewed him many times.
You've interviewed Hugo de Garis, one of the brilliant guy, one of the leading minds in the field of artificial intelligence and artificial brains. We have, of course, Tom Horn, who's also one of the leading figures in the movement against transhumanism. We have Richard Dolan coming over from the world of ufology at this conference. Many of the people listening to this show may know who Richard is. He's a brilliant guy also. And then we have a handful of other people speaking. It's a one-of-a-kind conference. There's nothing else like this out there.
Well, it's a big conference because it's a big topic. I mean, we're talking about the idea that they're going to transfer their consciousness to machines, or the idea that they are going to augment our human body with, make it into a cyborg type of thing, or what Hugo de Garis has talked about, which is the Art-elect war. He sees as we start to wake up as a society and we start to understand where all this artificial intelligence is going, because as many people have said, in order for the wolves to have freedom, a lot of sheep are going to have to die. Okay, and so his whole book is about, well, I'm working on creating artificial intelligence. He thinks that he's going to create godlike intelligence. And he thinks that as people look at this and whether or not that happens, there's going to be a massive disruption to society as people start to lose their jobs. That's going to be across all different industries. It's going to be horizontal. It's going to be vertical. It's going to be people at the bottom as well as people at the middle, and people at the top are going to be displaced and unemployed. It's going to create massive unrest. People are going to get upset with this artificial intelligence. And so he says, well, what's going to happen? He thinks there's going to be a war between the artificial intelligence crowd. He calls it the Art-elect war. And he thinks that there will be gigadeath as people who push back against this. So whether or not they get to some kind of self-aware Terminator thing where the robots are walking down the streets killing people, of course, the Pentagon's working on that, been working on that for quite a while. Whether or not they succeed with that, there's going to be massive disruption in society. The Bilderberg elites are talking about the precariat. They see that it's a very precarious situation because of this disruption. There's many different aspects of it, but another one that's very key is the genetic issue here. And as they start messing with the genome, the human genome and these other species, I mean, we don't know what we're going to get in terms of chimera, in terms of diseases that are rampant.
We are on the verge of the hybrid age. That's why the theme of this conference is transhumanism in the hybrid age. What most people don't realize is that we are literally on the precipice of the genetic revolution. It is about to happen. It hasn't even yet
Precipice
occurred.
is a good word.
That's
for
exactly
it, too, yeah.
where we are. The genetic revolution is coming for sure. It's unstoppable. It is inevitable. And during the genetic revolution, when this thing gets going, people are going, I mean, this is where we're going to have the designer babies. This is where people are going to be able to start to fundamentally change the trademarks that make us human, those genetic trademarks that make us human. And it's extremely dangerous. There's already a movement going on right now called the biohacking revolution. Yeah. And what this is these are just regular people who in the basements of their homes, in their garages, in their living room, are using CRISPR-Cas9 technology to modify their own genetic makeup, to modify their own genomes. And they're already doing this all over the world.
Isn't that amazing? Because that was something that, you know, when we had Jurassic Park, Michael Crichton said, be aware that things are moving very, very rapidly, and there is no ethical consideration as to where this is ultimately leading. And at the time that he was writing that and sounding the warning with Jurassic Park, because that was what he was talking about, there were some ethicists who were meeting together and said, where are we going with all this stuff? Well, yeah, we can talk about this, but it's decades off in the future. They recently got together about a year ago, and they said, this is already happening, and it's happening with technology, as you point out, that is accessible to individuals. I mean, we're not talking about DARPA only. It's accessible at a very low level to people. And so this is something right now that can get out of the laboratory.
You can modify your DNA for less than $1,000 right now.
Wow, that is scary.
I think the epigenetic aspect of this is truly frightening. I maintain, David, and as we do our different films, the ancients had knowledge of this, and obviously every mythological creature all over the world, I just, we've got books to read, people can go do their homework, but they always deal with the combining of animal and human DNA.
Sure, that's rampant in Greek and Roman mythology and so forth.
It goes back to the Sumerians, it goes back to the Egyptians, all of, if you will, Anubis. And by the way, Anubis is in the United States. Remember, they're parading the statue of Anubis, a man's body, dog's head, and all over the country. But the point being is I tell people CRISPR is going to basically be a crispier technology. We're going to, they talk about crispy critters, and I'm trying to be a little facetious here because this is very significant. Unless this thing is stopped and unless this thing is dealt with and people really get to shake themselves out of what I would call the Facebook blob and come to grips with it, this is the end of them. This is the end of their progeny. This is the end of their lineage. This is the end. Their children will be either assimilate or die. Remember, who was it said, by consent or by conquest, there will be a new world order? Yeah. Well, some of these robots are already in existence, and everything that DARPA is talking about is always a offensive or defensive weapon.
That's right.
When you've got...
no, it's really just to help little old ladies across the street. That's why they're creating the robot technology. technology, right? Or it's to shut down Fukushima. Or no, this is the Defense Department. There's weapons.
Robotic bats that they send into caves looking for people that are fleeing from their love society.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, Tobor the robot isn't going to be Brother Love robot, you know? And so I came out with a new book. It'll be out in June, but it's really critical. It's the last book I'm writing in this whole field. I'll maybe write on ancient stuff as it comes to the forefront, but it's called Terminated, the End of Man. And, in it, I document this stuff. And keeping up with it, as I'm trying to get the last chapters written, every day there's something new. And basically the gravestones on it, Terminated, the End of Man, is here lies the human race who failed to see their end when it stared them in the face.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about, it's kind of fringe right now, fringe to the majority of people. And a lot of people just say, well, I don't care.
Yeah.
Well,
or I think it isn't going to happen in my lifetime.
Yeah, lifetime.
All right.
The thing is, remember, everything we've been warning about on talk radio for the past 20 years, people didn't think it would be happening in their lifetime. Or my favorite cop-out is I'm going to die and, my kids will deal with it. I said, well, then you're just a bloody butcher turning your kids over to a technology that's set to destroy them. Because remember, by consent or by conquest, and that's why they're already programming, i.e. Facebook, Faces of Death book, that's what it is. They're programming everyone to accept that the global brain, the beast in the book of Revelation, it was given power to the beast to make war on the saints. So there's a war coming. It's underway, but it's going to be beyond. And I'm with Hugo de Garis on this. It's going to be gigadeath. It's billions.
Oh, it's going to be horrible. Yeah. And you just look at all the bad, it's not just technology is always good and bad. The question is, as we look at technology and the way that it's been changing lately, and in the last few years, it's especially the DARPA technology, it has been focused on concentrating control in the hands of the few. Okay, and in the past, technology has been working in the other way in many cases. But the other aspect of this that you just talked about is, as we're talking about the time frame of this, and whether or not this is going to be something that's going to affect us. Many people will look at this and say, well, I'll be dead by then. I don't really care. But, think back to the Bible again. What was it? King Hezekiah, they came and said, well, the Babylonians are going to take over your country. And he goes, after you die. And it's like, oh, good. It won't bother me. That's not the kind of, he's a good guy, but that's not the kind of guy we want to be. If we see something like this coming, we don't want to abandon our children and our progeny to this type of tyranny.
Well, go ahead.
Absolutely. I mean, the singularity is set to happen in 2045. So we're not that far off. The technological singularity, which will fundamentally change everything we know about the world in terms of artificial intelligence and so forth.
And they'll get us locked in the cities by 2030.
Exactly. And we're on the cusp of the genetic revolution. It is already happening. It is underway. Yeah. And especially for our children, our grandchildren, people who are my age and my children, they will be living in a world vastly different than the one that we're living in right now.
All right. So the conference that's coming up in the fall, you can sign up for that, Gen 6. That's SIX.com. If you use the code ALEX, you can get a 10% discount. I'll be there. Steve Quayle will be there. Timothy Alberino will be there. Hugo de Garis, Tom Horn. A lot of people will be speaking at that conference. This is what is going to be happening in the future, folks. If you want to have knowledge of how to fight this, how to resist this, because we're not going to go into this quietly, it's very important for you to understand.
Maximize your potential and take your body back with Super Male Vitality. We're breaking the conditioning and fighting back against the globalists' war on male vitality. Our ultimate non-GMO formula is sourced from powerful organic herbs that have been gathered from around the world and then concentrated for maximum potency. Super Male Vitality was developed to activate your body's natural processes instead of using synthetic chemicals. InfoWars Life wants to bring you the highest quality products. Our unique combination of ingredients is designed to assist the body in regulating proper balance and creating superior vitality in males. Support your body and mind and take yourself to the next level. Boost your vitality and energize your life. Take control of your body. Grab a bottle of Super Male Vitality today at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com.